Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. This is Vince Berghella, again for AJOG-MFM, the Extraordinaire Within You, the idea of Kavita Narang, my co-host. Kavita, we have a wonderful guest today. Why don't you introduce her?
Thank you so much, Vince. And thank you so much, Dr. Irina Burd, who is here with us today. So, we probably have some returning audience listeners here, and we might have some new audience. So, I would love to I have the honor here to introduce with us Dr. Irina Burd, professor, chair, scientist, incredible leader, trailblazer, visionary. Dr. Bird is a professor and chair of the Department of OBGYN and Reproductive Sciences at the University of Maryland. She completed her residency for OBGYN at Thomas Jefferson University Hospital and fellowship for MFM at the University of Pennsylvania, after which she served as faculty and professor at the Johns Hopkins University for many years and is now moved over to become chair at the University of Maryland. Dr. Bird has published over 160 peer-reviewed research articles, holds multiple research grants, and is a recipient of several awards and honors. So I hope all of you are so ready to be inspired by her incredible journey today. Dr. Bird, thank you so much for being here with us. And, we always love to start our sessions with some gratitude. So if I can let you take it away and maybe share something you're grateful for today.
Thank you. It's first of all, it's an honor to be here, and it's truly honor because Vince Berghella was one of the superstars who I look up to. So to be here with you, both of you, is tremendous honor. And the gratitude I want to say is that I wouldn't be here without my family, and that is truly my village. My husband, my two sons, my parents, my in-laws is my nuclear family, and I wouldn't be here without them. And I'm truly blessed to have them in my life.
Beautiful, beautiful. Vince, how about you?
I'll do the same theme, thankful for my rocks, my wife, and I two kids, the two older ones. I saw the first one Saturday, very happy. And then we watched a soccer game, didn't go well, but just spending time with him was a victory. And the two younger ones who really light my life. What about you, Kavita?
Beautiful. No, I think same, family for sure. That's, I think, something we always remind ourselves to be grateful for every day. And I think also acknowledging that when you wake up in the morning, like today, I woke up and all my family, all the people I love, woke up as well. Not everyone has that. You never know what the next day holds, but when you wake up in the morning, the people you love are still here with you. I really am so grateful for that. On my drive to work this morning, I got a call and talk to my grandma, who's almost 90 years old, and she's woke up, she's happy, she's healthy, and it just really made my day and set the tone and energy for the rest of my week. So I'm really grateful for that. Yeah. And just for our returning, for a new audience, again, I wanted to restate the mission and vision of our session of this podcast series that we started before we jump in. My mission was really, when we look up to all these incredible thought leaders and researchers and scientists and professors in our field, sometimes you see the end, you see the success, but I've always been curious about the journey. Like, how did you get there? How do you navigate? What's the mindset that helps you get to that level where you are able to act in service and make such an incredible global impact? So that's why I kind of came up with this series so we can interview to share stories as a global mentorship platform to inspire younger generations of researchers and doctors. Because when we get inspired and we believe that we can do it too, imagine the ripple effect and the global impact we can all create together, right? And so Irina, when we start our session, one of our favorite questions, and Vince and I love to start with, is to kind of really take it back to your childhood. And if you can share a little bit about how your childhood or your upbringing or your family life shaped who you are today or your career.
Well, that's a great question. I am very blessed to have phenomenal parents. My parents are alive and probably watching this. But I want to say that I've been always inspired. So I'm an only child. I was born in Ukraine, former Soviet Union. in 1970s. So, when you see like standard movies about what Soviet Union was, that's probably the era that I was there. So, I graduated high school there. As an only child, my parents always wanted me to get the best education, to go to the best school. Um, was always allowed to do whatever my passions were. So, um, really supported. And my parents still great supporters of me and my mentors. I call them when I have stuff at work that I need somebody to help me figure out, when I have family issues. So, childhood being supported, I think, is very, very important. Um, and I never felt, as I was a girl or a woman trying to get into medicine, I always dreamt of medicine ever since I was 4 years old. I had like doll clinics. It was quite fun. You have this dream and then you just live it, right? So I've been always supported. And then when I was about 17, I graduated high school. I got into university. My dad came home one day and he said, "Listen, I have this opportunity to work in the United States and, partner with folks who want to do business in Eastern Europe. Perry Videx, who's been instrumental in bringing us to the United States. And Greg could be also watching this. I'm forever grateful to him. And so my father said, "Why don't you leave university for 1 year and we'll go take a sabbatical?" I just got into university. I was 17. And he said, and we'll go, you'll get cultural experience. It's even better than any university. I said, I think it's a marvelous idea. We left November 18th. And about a week or two after we left, Ukraine separated from Soviet Union. So we had a ticket actually to go back on February 3rd with my mom. So the idea was that we will spend a little bit of time, and then my dad would go back and forth, and then and we had the ticket to go back, and because Ukraine separated, we never went back. And so my journey in the United States education system started, and again, my parents always been a tremendous support, so I owe it to them for always lifting me up, for always cheering me on. And I always say that, and I always tell my children, you could never choose your parents, but if I I had to choose my parents, I would choose exactly the two individuals who are my parents, and I wouldn't even think about it at all.
Wow.
Wow, what a story, Rena. If you could expand on that, I'm keen to ask about where the drive comes from. We all have tremendous drives. I've seen it, firsthand, with you. Only child, but was it your father's work ethic, your mother work ethic? Was it the maybe the difficulty of being in a foreign country, in a way, unplanned, in a way planned? What do you think, in particular? What did you see when you were young that inspire you to, like, I'm going to work hard?
Well, I come from a family of technically workaholics. So my father, so,
There you go.
I am actually the lazy one, probably. But
That says a lot.
my dad, my dad always says, he says, when you say, "Oh, I'm tired," he's like, "You can't be tired. You'll be tired in a coffin." I mean, it's like,
Ah,
so there's no
Yeah.
such concept as being tired. So you just have to, what he's like, what does it even mean being tired? So like when I was growing up, there was no like being tired. You just do stuff. You pick up and do stuff. Uh,
Mm.
and you decide what you want to do and you do it. So it's there of course my dad would have wanted me to do to go into business. Like,
Mm.
he's done tremendous. He has tremendous career in business, and I didn't fulfill his dream as an only child going in business, but I think they're very proud of me. And maybe that's why administratively I'm so good, because it's in my veins.
Love that. I love that.
But I do like operational psychology, and a lot of that I learned from my parents,
Hmm.
sort of the organizational psychology and such. So we always would discuss certain things and how things should be done, and you know. So for example, one concept my parents always taught me is that you have to be nice to everybody equally,
Mm.
and you have to respect everybody equally at your workplace. They could be your boss, or they could be a custodian, or they could be a janitor, or or anybody. They have to have the same amount of respect. They have to have the same amount of honor given to them, because they're all in your place. So those are the things that I learned as a child. And I remember my dad, coming with him to visit his place of work, and he was so loved and so revered by everybody, and so is my mom. And that sort of sense of being loved, appreciated, I always cherish that. And then I remember how fond everybody was of them.
Mhm.
Both of them now. My dad is still kind of working from home, but he is formally retired as of May 1st. Actually, just retired.
Wonderful. Well, and that is truly is great advice. And I think that's what also is a hallmark of a great leader, right? You are able to work with everyone because you are loved, and that's actually what allows people to make it to the top. I think that's such wonderful advice. And then you mentioned your father was in business. So where did medicine come from for you? Like, did you have other family members that were in science or in medicine?
Yeah, so my uncle is a transplant surgeon. He's
Oh.
also retired now. And when I was little, I would come, and he lived earlier with my grandmother when he was not married, and he had a lot of journals, surgery journals and everything, and I would just go through them when I was 3 or 4. I really
Wow.
loved looking at stuff, and then I would have these clinics of dolls trying. So I don't know, this is just inspiration
Yeah.
from my uncle, and so that was kind of interesting. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
And
my
then
parents are not physicians, and my grandmother on my father's side went through the World War II,
mm,
being on the front lines in the hospitals, so that also affected me. So my grandmothers also live in me a bit. So while my immediate family, my father and mother, were not physicians, I'm definitely inspired by my grandmother, my uncle, and that fearlessness a little bit, to be on the front line, um, and help people during World War II was not probably easy, and she had 2 children in tow.
wow.
So, Irina, we go back a while. I remember your first day or first week, of residency, um, and you came in as an MD PhD, which it's not usual. There are not many of you. And as I said before, my son now is going through the same program, and it's grueling. I guess the first question is, how come you did an MD PhD? What made you, you had medicine since you were 4 years old, but it's a even higher bar to do an MD PhD. How much did you want that? What was the plan at that point, if you can remember?
Oh, I remember. I could tell you the story. It will be a little bit personal, and so there's a little bit of personal issues there, and so trigger warning for loss. So when I was in first year medical school, I wanted, like everybody else, to do research, and I actually received Merck Afar scholarship in pharmacology, to do research in that summer. So, and folks who I worked with really, really wanted me to stay and do MD PhD. They said, "Oh, this is great. You applied for a grant yourself, stay." And I really didn't like it, or didn't want to protract my education longer. Um, And this is after spending 2 years after college working in the lab. So I had some ideas about the lab. I liked it, but sort of was not really excited about doing MD PhD. Or at that time, I was offered. They said, "It's fine. Don't do MD PhD. Do Howard Hughes year. You'll be great." There was a program back then for Howard Hughes scholars, and you could have done it for a year. So I didn't, and I lived my life, and I didn't apply for MD PhD standard way. And in third year, I had I was pregnant, so I was married through medical school. I got married before going to medical school, and we planned have a baby in the third year at the end of third year, so I could spend some of the fourth year. And I lost that baby to parvovirus in the third trimester. And I remember exactly when I got it. It was a little traumatic experience. I could talk about it now. It's been 25 years. So, and that's why I said it's a trigger warning for people's loss. Um, and at that point, I even thought about, not going back to medical school. Like I was a little bit lost. And I'm very fortunate. I had a phenomenal mentor, Dr. Gloria Bachman, who is Associate Dean of Medical School for Women's Health. And back then she was in charge of Women's Health Institute. And she was actually first person I called. And she said, listen, it's okay. It was April, so all the rotations were done, and I had to do the pediatrics rotation where I was at that time was done, and they let me take exam in September. They said, "Don't worry about it. Take this exam in September." So I was done with classes, and they had this huge town hall, basically what's happening in the fourth year of medical school. And I came down the steps, and I said, "You know what? I'm not thinking not doing fourth year. I will do a year separately." And she brought me in, and she said, "Listen, we need to occupy with something." And she's like, "You're going to help me write a grant." So, that's how I got into grant writing. And she gave me some principles. She said, "You can't stay at home and not do anything. You need to be going somewhere, and you need to be working, and you need to be with people."
Mm-hmm.
And that really saved me. And then that year that I decided to do turned in somebody quit MD PhD program because there are numbered spots. I was after third year, and they said, "Well, if you're interested, we could potentially get you into the program, um, and you would be unique person because you would be after third year." But it actually worked out so well because I could use some of the fourth year rotations to finalize my thesis. But a very, very non-standard way of getting into MD PhD program. But that set up my whole career. So that's a good lesson in life for people. Sometimes what you think is really something bad in your life, there's always a silver lining. I wouldn't have my phenomenal older son, Alan. There was no way he would have been born because I had him right after this happened in my first year of PhD. And my career that really needed that knowledge of bench science wouldn't have happened.
Wow.
Amazing story.
Wow. So first of all, I just want to say, we're so sorry to hear that, of course, and thank you for being so vulnerable in sharing that, to the whole audience, and turning that pain into power and purpose is really what you did out here, and it's just beautiful, and how you've continued to use your own story to help now millions of women, through your work and research. Yeah. And was that part of the reason you went into women's health, or like OBGYN, or what was the drive there?
So my PhD was in reproductive endocrinology and infertility topic. I studied HCG and HCG-based drugs to prevent sort of consequences of PCOS.
Mm.
And I was really gung-ho on getting into REI fellowship until I did a rotation with Dr. Berghella. and I fell in love with MFM at Thomas Jefferson. So I remember second year. So up until second year, I really was like, this is what I'm going to do. And then I really, that's, you feel passionate about women's health. You feel passionate to help women in Center City. And that's, I'm primarily worked in Center City. So I'm very much, aligned with my own passions, and that you only could learn that once you see that. And when I saw, um, at Jefferson, we truly had very sick patients and still have, probably, right? So yes, but helping them, I found sort of my calling, and I really always appreciate Vincenzo attitude. He gave me wings and let me fly. I said, at some point, I said, I wanted to find some lab space. He's like, we'll connect you to somebody. Tom Tolenko ended up being a great mentor for me for many years. And he left Jefferson at some point, but, we found the equipment, we found everything. And I was able to run a very small lab in a lab space and publish during residency. So, you know, I was allowed to do whatever I wanted to do. Essentially, that support is really amazing, and the fact that Vincenzo was always supportive is just amazing. And he was the one when I got into fellowship, and he knew I wanted to go to University of Pennsylvania because Michal was working at that time with a mouse model, and I wanted to learn the mouse model of preterm birth.
Mm.
And I learned at 12:01, I learned where I'm going for my fellowship. At 12:02 or 12:03, he calls me. He's like, "Congratulations!"
You almost bring tears to my eyes. Well, first of all, for the audience, for disclosure, obviously, I love you. We go back a long time, but you're so famous that Kavita brought up your name. Which is a true story, and of course, like, I don't want to be, how do you say, partial to former mentees, and I wasn't expecting, all these memories. But obviously, he warms my heart. So thanks for saying all that. And I remember, I brought up residency from the beginning because I remember when you started, we were a little bit older because of the PhD. We're different, all three of us, have different backgrounds. And I remember, like, we're residents that is very clinical, still are. And sometimes actually having that PhD can be an hindrance because, they want people that, just take call at night, and, they don't want people during residency, to go to the lab and, spend time there and not spend time, in doing a hysterectomy or whatever. And you were great during residency because you did your job first, and at the same time you followed your passion. And again, for the audience, Jefferson and Penn are collaborators. We're next to each other, 20 blocks. But at the same time, just good competition. I always say Penn is the best thing that ever happened to me because, they always drive me harder, as excellent neighbors. And the fact you went there, from a resident Jefferson to a fellow at Penn was, to me, a humongous success. Not only your personal success, but for everybody, for Philadelphia, for medicine. And I think another thing, maybe you can take it then to the next steps. How, from Penn and then Hopkins, it seems like you really were following. You were doing what you like to do, which I always talk about, Irina. You were like, you found a little lab, in residency, and then, you were looking for Mikhail. And then, when you left Penn, it was a big deal as well. I think, you surprised a few people. You were already in a Mecca, so to speak, with a great mentor. But you reinvented yourself again.
Well, I'll tell you a story. Also, it's not a straightforward path. So
Love
I
this
had
story.
so the most wonderful memory that you asked me before to think about, like, my memory, professional memory. What was, like, my best professional memory? My best professional memory is getting a BOG AOGF grant.
That's
Okay, so that was like I I got my own sort of ABAG-AOGA grant. And, I taught you, I learned how to write grants, but I had never gotten sort of a career defining moment. So as a fellow at the University of Pennsylvania, I was very supported by many folks. Debbie Driscoll, who was the chair, she was really supportive for everybody who wanted to do research. And, she wanted to apply in numbers that year. We had 8 people applying for the same grant. So I was 9 months pregnant when I wrote that grant. I submitted it July 15th. It was due July 15th. I delivered July 22nd, my younger son. So at some points I was like, well, let the contractions start because I'm not finishing this. And at some point it was like when I was close to completing it, I was like, oh gosh, no contractions now. But apparently I had 2 weeks to relax after submission. Anyway, so the the memory was wonderful. So I really cherished it. I got it as a fellow. So I applied after my first year of fellowship. I got it, and it was started as a third year fellow. So I started as a third year fellow. It's a 3-year grant. So I stayed at University of Pennsylvania as an attending physician to continue with the grant and work, and loved everything. I mean, when Debbie gave me bench space, I used to come and touch it, like my bench space. They got research assistant, Mike was my research assistant, and for many years he had actually moved with me to Hopkins at one point. Anyway, so I loved everything until sort of my husband, who does international corporate law, he came home one day. So I was already an attending at Penn, and he said, "Listen, I was offered this job at Washington, D.C. And of course, Washington, D.C. is the place for international corporate law and international law. And he said, I'm offered, would you consider moving now that you are done with your training?"
Okay.
And realize, the reason I was in Philadelphia for residency was because he was working in Philadelphia. So I really was limited. I was there a resident, and then I was there a fellow. So, and then he comes in, he's like, "How about that?" I was like, "What do you mean?" I'm just past my boards. I was just so happy. And so I had to reinvent myself. I wrote bunch of cold letters, basically, out of the blue, because nobody's looking, nobody writes, "We're looking for physician scientists and we're ready to protect 75% of their time doing research." But it turned out that Karen Blakemore at Hopkins, she remembered me from fellowship. And this is an amazing story by itself. I went there. So when I went there to fellowship interviews, they loved me so much. She wrote me a letter. I still have a letter, how amazing I am, and how they wished, but I couldn't move to Baltimore at that time. We had to stay in Philadelphia. In fact, she didn't know if I didn't match, I'd be a stay-at-home mom. But but she wrote me a letter, and she remembered me from these interviews. And I said, "I want to be a physician scientist." And she said, "We're really interested in physician scientists. We don't have anybody right now in MFM, but I'm going to go to the dean." And she took Hal Fox was the chair at that time. And they really, really lobbied for me, made me go on these interviews also around the country, telling the dean that potentially somebody else was going to snatch me. I had to end up in DMV area, but Karen said, "You have to go to these interviews." So I went to interview with, those are separate stories, but in Boston and New York. And then, so they knew that I'm interviewing elsewhere. And I got a phenomenal package. I got $1.5 million. I could say that now. I got lab space. I got joint appointment with neurology because I study how fetal brain development is affected by maternal immune activation and in infections. So, but the piece of pediatric neurology was very important, and so I got a new uh, a new mentor had to be assigned, and for my third year of the grant, Mike Johnson, he passed away. Unfortunately, he was a CMO of Kennedy Krieger Institute for Disabilities, pediatric neurologist, and so he could advise me on pediatric sort of fetal brain development.
Mhm.
And so that's not a quite, that's not a straightforward story. Like I just decided had to be figured out. And the reason it was, going back to Karen, I remember Hal Fox calling me, and he said, "We got you the package that you wanted. You got the space." He just called me. I was in my office at Penn, and he called me like old fashioned call, and I was there, and I picked it up, and he's like, "It's as good as in the bag." I had no paperwork. I haven't signed anything. I run, I run to Sam Perry, who was my division director. I was like, "Sam, I got a job. I got a job." He's like, "Hold on. Nobody called here." He's like, "You can't get a job if nobody calls here." Okay, I run back to my office at BRP, and what my phone is, I call Hal back, and I was like, "But nobody called there." Or Karen, I called Karen. I was like, "Karen, nobody called here. Are you sure? Like Hal is right?" And Karen is like, "Oh, don't worry. We have your evaluations from fellowship. That's enough for us."
Wow.
So that's how they hired me. So on those evaluations from fellowship interviews. So I always said I was fellowship director for 5 years. And I always say to people, you never know, the impression you make today may change your career forever.
Wow.
Like, you go somewhere and they're like, "We remember you from fellowship interviews." And then, so.
Wow, that's such a remarkable story. I love that. And I want to ask a little bit more about, like you said, you got like that 1.5 million, you got everything you asked for. Like, what did you have to negotiate, at that point? Like, like I think a lot of people struggle with that, to ask for what they want. How do you go about doing that? Because I remember for your talk, at SMFM too, when you were giving the top of the wellness stuff, one thing that stuck with me, you're like, you just got to ask, you got to show up, you got to ask for what you want. And that really stuck with me. So can you talk a little bit about that mindset or that, personality trait or character? I think it's really inspiring.
Yeah, so you have to ask for what you want, but it's a negotiation process. And two people really helped me with the budget, so I had to come up with a budget. I had to write for and Chi Dang was the person at that time who was at Dean's office, who was looking at my budget and figuring out, because the money didn't come from the department. I think at that point Hal was chair for, like, I don't know, 14 years maybe. So they didn't have money to give out specifically. So they had to go to the dean's office to ask. And so Dr. Chi Dang was in charge of that. And I had to come up, so that he asked me to come up with a budget of what I wanted, all the equipment and who I wanted in the lab and such. And I owe it to Becky Simmons, who's pediatrics at Penn, and George Kukas, who was GYN oncology at that time. I really went to them and I was like, "Here's like a budget. What else do I need to put in?" And Becky gave me a phenomenal advice. And in fact, many more advices after that. But she said, "Put some big item that you don't need, like for 150,000. It will be easy for them just to like, oh, take it off." And
Wow.
so it was like something that that they will have, whatever. But that way, they will be taking stuff off. So you just have to put something that they potentially have it. You could use it from somebody else, but yeah. So that was one advice that I got in negotiations, and then a bunch of other things were actually taken off. And then George had a phenomenal also advice. He said, not when I was there, he's like, "Now write a letter to like everybody in the world that if they have any old equipment that they're not using, you could house some of that equipment. If they needed, they could come to your lab, but if they have unused equipment, you would love to unload it from them." So I actually got that way a bunch of freezers that I didn't have to buy. People gave me old freezers. Actually, like they served me for 5 or 6 years after I got them. Like animal hood, like a lot of cool stuff I got just by writing to Johns Hopkins community at large. Hey, I'm a new person here. If you have any old equipment, would love to
Wow.
unload it from you. And that saved me a lot of money as well. But having people who could advise to you on that is very, very important.
Yeah.
That's amazing, Irina. Um, you reinvented yourself so many times. I'm just thinking, come from a different country,
Mhm.
English and medicine, and changing careers in a way, PhDs, and you talked about fellowship director, so many things. One thing that I'm really impressed, I have to tell you, it's your warmth that comes
Mhm.
obviously through today's session, and your drive to again find new challenges. And I think to become chair, a young age, I think in general, obviously people saw something special in you, but you go from, again, I don't know if they were rats or whatever model I think it was, fetal brains, and how to make them better or worse, and writing grants, to managing a very big department. Did you see that? I mean, I saw something special for sure in residency, and many other ones must have seen the same. Some people have it in them, and you can see it in your kids. I'm sure you saw it in yours as well. Some people don't, but not too many people are happy chairs. And you seem to be a happy chair. I'm sure you have difficulties. I'm sure there are struggles. But tell us how, maybe you can inspire some people or fellows now, or residents, or junior faculty, to not be afraid of all
Mhm.
the challenges you seeked in some way.
That's a great point. Yes, I generally, like 99% of my time, I'm super happy. So there's a little bit of a sometimes a streak. But what I tell my mentees, and I have a lot of them who are on K grants and want to do also in leadership training and such, I always tell them this concept of bulldozer. It just you have to sit in your bulldozer and you just have to keep going. Like, just imagine. And some mentees will laugh right now when they hear this. I sometimes gifted them one. I said, I gift you one.
Oh, wow.
Here you go. You're in
Great.
bulldozer. Nothing will affect you. I think it's a concept. I have various psychological concepts that help me, for example.
Hmm.
So bulldozer is one of them. So, like, for example, if somebody say, do you have any obstacles? Well, I don't see them as obstacles. It's just a rough road. Like, are you not going to go on a rough road because you have a bulldozer, right? So you
I
could
love
go at
that.
any road. um pending, there is a road, and if there's no road, we'll trailblaze, right? You have a bulldozer. So there are obstacles, but remember, you could always turn those obstacles into silver lining. One of those silver linings, COVID was really bad for us. In Maryland, we are capitated state. And it was bad, but in the end, financially, it ended up being the best for the state of Maryland because we were given the capitations. So there was a silver lining for that, right? Horrible situation of COVID, but for finances, now we sort of like, well, for capitation, if something else like this comes in, we could get better. But now we have to reinvent ourselves now, right? Versus um, uh, before that. So it's the same thing. You have to find what is your silver lining. There's always silver lining. And then there's always famous quote, where's chaos, there's possibility and opportunity, right? You know that.
Yeah.
Um, and so there's always an opportunity in chaos. So as long as you are in your bulldozer and you know what you want, so you need to know what you want. So I think you need to have a clear understanding what your passion and purpose are. And those are two different things, right? Passion, purpose, and who your people are. So I am into the P's. So passion, purpose, people, and then progress, profit. I think that's important concepts we always have to
Say
remember.
them again, Irina, for the public.
Passion. That's what your passion, right?
That's the
That's what
base.
makes you happy. Then purpose, how you turn what's making you happy into making the better for the world is the purpose. So purpose is, what your contribution to the world is with your passion, right? Purpose. And then you surround yourself with people to do that, right? To achieve your purpose. And if you do that right, there's progress and there's profit. So,
Beautiful.
Love that.
Love
Wow.
that. Love that. And to follow up real quick, Kavita, the chairman thing. Can I ask you the story? I guess you've been telling so many stories. Like, to me, again, following your career, you were at Hopkins. You're doing great work in the neuro department, OB-GYN department. Rising, well, not rising anymore. Big star. I'm sure you were happy, doing that in a great place with great things. What motivated you to were you seeking chair positions, or again, to like kind of let other people know how things like that happen,
again, not a straightforward path.
Okay.
Nothing like I never have this, like, this is what I want, right? It just I have 5-year plans.
Okay.
Okay. And then Mike
I
Minuti.
must say that's not old Russia kind of thing. 5 year. Russia used to have
5-year
from
plans, right?
Ukraine, but
That's how I got 5-year plan. Right. So this is like in my mentality because I graduated high school.
Sure.
I'm allergic to something, so sorry, my eyes are watering a little bit. I'm not sure what it is, but we'll figure it out later. But 5-year, so I have 5-year plans, right? Mike Minuti once told me when I was at Penn, Mike Minuti passed away. He was a phenomenal mentor as well. And he said, I asked him once, I said about faculty appointments. And I said, we were talking about tenure. And he said this. He's like, 10-year, you get in 10 years. So at Penn, approximately 10 years. He's like, that's what 10-year is. So as long as you keep your mind open, you work for it, at such. So 10-year, you'll be professor at 10-year. And at Penn, you could get 10-year earlier, associate professor, I guess, and then professor at about 10 years. So professor with tenure, like your full regalia kind of thing, is about 10 years. So I had that in my mind, right? So, and in 2020, I became full professor at Hopkins, and then I just sat down with my 5-year plan, and I was like, and what do I do now? Like, I had a path to this.
I've accomplished everything.
I mean, I got to be a professor at Hopkins, and then now, and I'm fellowship director. I love what I did. I loved everything, every minute. So fellowship director, I ran a Saudi Arabian program for physician scientists for 5 years. That was also fun, separate conversation of me going to Saudi Arabia and, sort of learned a lot of lessons in life. But I was like, what's my 5-year plan? And I was thinking about maybe division director, maybe. But the thing was, my husband couldn't move again, right? So he is at Washington, D.C. So, I went for some interviews and people were like, well, will your husband will move? I was like, well, let's try finding him. Try finding him a job. He's a partner in the law firm that does a lot of. So it wasn't really, realistic as such, and and as much as I had ambition, like my ambition, couldn't be sort of matched by that. And that's before people worked from home. So now it's a lot easier. Like my husband actually is a founding partner in a law firm that has over 200 some attorneys. And they're all like, it's a 2.0. It's like reinvented from their offices, from home. But back then it wasn't popular to work from home, right? So It's not like he's like, I'm an international corporate attorney, work from home. So that just didn't happen. So, I went to these interviews, and I went for a chair interview as well, elsewhere. Um, and at that time, my husband already had a different job that he could go with me. So I figured out that maybe chair is for me, but I've never been a division director, right? But again, somebody saw something in me. So when
Smart
job
people.
came up at University of Maryland, which is our town, um, they believed in me and they said that I'm exactly who they wanted to be running the department. And we're doing quite well. I'm coming on 3-year anniversary.
Wow.
My sort of vision for the first 2 years was safety, and we have 7 hospitals in the system. That's another thing I didn't know when they hired me to be a chair of department. They hired me to be chair of department, but then quickly when I came on, they said, and you're responsible for quality and safety at the other 6 hospitals in the system. So we needed to figure out and sort of how we bring them together. So November 2022, I established OB Leadership Council. And then we have tremendous stuff that came out of Leadership Council, including NEST, which is a fetal monitoring hub for all 7 hospitals, which is really decreasing already bad outcomes. We see that, and safety on the labor floor. And now we're growing into GYN. So there's a lot of cool stuff that happened. Sorry, I took a little while with this story.
No,
No,
I love that. No, that's a beautiful. So if I may ask you, so you have 5-year plan. So what is your 5-year plan right now? Do you?
I am within my 5-year plan of being a chair. I'll tell you later how that goes. I only go by 5s. I can only see so far into the forest. But it's been year 3 right now. I have my 5-year plan on a paper that I submitted to the dean when I came. He loved it. We just keep knocking out all those parts, and then we'll see what happens. And professionally, aside from being a chair, I'm president of Society for Reproductive Investigation this year. We're forming a phenomenal right now scientific academy for entrepreneurship. Folks should look into that because we need to rethink how we do research. And people need to think about their discoveries and how to bring it to market outside of maybe NIH funds and getting investors and such, I think. And that's something we're going to teach this year for Society of Reproductive Investigation. I'm very much involved in AGOS, that grant that I got, ABOG-AOGF. Now I'm on the committee, and I'm involved at SMFM. I'm a board member for Foundation of Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine, helping bring more funding to MFM. I think we need to figure out how to fund our mission.
Wow. Underlying all this incredible work that you do, if someone had to ask you, what is your why behind all of this? What is your why?
good question.
So that goes back to passion and purpose, right? I am passionate about women's health. I am passionate about women's health research. And the purpose is how I apply that passion into helping the world. So what do I do? So what is my purpose that I'm happy about? What makes me happy? Driving 26 miles every day to work, right? I live very close to DC and I drive to Baltimore every day, and we didn't move. So for 15 years, I've been driving, close to 15 years. I've been driving to Baltimore, and that makes me happy. I go because I'm passionate about something and I have a purpose. So, and the purpose is to help women's health. Create access to abortion care, that is something we got as an institution, a $10.9 million grant to teach mid-level providers how to perform abortion. This is an important thing. And Dr. Jessica Lee just received a Hero Award from our Maryland state for that. So I'm so proud of folks in my department doing, amazing stuff. And my job is to be their cheerleader. That's what my job now is. So in a role of a chair, you sort of step aside a little bit and provide more of a chairing role, more parent-like role. And then I continue doing my research. We just published a couple really cool papers, but it becomes also what do I bring to my department and how do I lift them up?
I love that. That's beautiful. And if you have to, like, I think a workplace is really defined by its culture, and as chair, how do you define the culture of your workplace? Like, what is something that is important to you as for workplace culture?
Well, so I think it's kind of like a little hypocritical, but it's my choice. Um, I like to be on 24/7, but I like for people who work with me to take their time and take rests. And I am very, very, very strict about it. So people need to take their time. But for me personally, I have to tell you, I feel more comfortable when people could approach me at any time. This weekend, a bunch of people called me for different reasons. And I love that because I am part of whatever they're doing.
I love that.
So that is the hypocrisy in a bit. I tell them that they need to take the time and they need to like close their computers and go on vacation. But I'm yet to take a vacation where I didn't answer a phone call. Or I in my 2.5+ years here, I have not put a sign that I'm out on vacation. So because I really want to be there for them, that's like the department is like my child, my baby, and I want to know everything that's going on. I certainly don't want to be surprised. So, but this is what I choose, and that's part of my wellness.
I love that.
Right? So that's my choice, and that's my wellness. So it may sound hypocritical, but this is what I choose to do.
That's so beautiful. I love that you said, because when people think about, like, when they're getting calls on vacations and stuff, a lot of people's perspective, or I think a lot of societal perspective that's been ingrained in us, is that that's work. We should not be doing that during rest. But one thing you said just now is when they call you, you feel like you're a part of what they're doing. I think you made this something bigger than yourself, and I think that perspective is so beautiful. I really love that. Vince, you look like you had something to say.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I want to go back, and think of all the young audiences, audience listening in. You had a husband in a very busy, powerful job. You actually moved for him a couple of times. You have two wonderful kids. You obviously raised to be wonderful people. We heard all this accomplishment, at a local but also national levels. A leader in so many of our major societies. Were there secrets? There's actually something that Kavita likes to ask. Were there secrets about, how did you make yourself, 24/7 available, and at the same time, having the kids around, I don't know, did you sleep a little, did you have, relatives or other help around? How did you, balance?
So everybody does it differently. We had a live-in nanny for a long time. I do have help, so I wouldn't be able to be here if I didn't. So that's how I accomplish it. That's not to say that I'm going to tell people, get a nanny or get an au pair or like everybody's choice of spending their money is different, right? So this is all resources, and you have to figure out how you balance and prioritize your resources. So that sort of the resource management was to get a nanny. I remember when I was a resident, for example, everything to a penny that I got went to a nanny for my residency salary. So whatever I got, it just went boom and into a nanny. So it's that was our choice, right? So we lived on one salary, my husband at that time, and and we chose to do that. You cannot accomplish it, and you cannot be having luxury of 24/7 if you don't have support. Some folks have family, some folks have help that who they hire. I just don't know if you could accomplish everything yourself. So I believe it's not possible to as my son says, the younger son says, to get realized. To get realized, you need help
Mm.
and you need your village. So either you have already the village or you make the village your people, right? That's the other P, the people. You need to figure out your people. That's who helps you. We're not here alone. You cannot achieve anything alone. And that's the bottom line.
Wow.
That's great. And you must have been an amazing example to your kids.
I try. But it's like this African proverb, right? You could go alone, you could go far, right? But you could go together,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. And outside of work and all this incredible thing, you clearly invest a lot of your time because this is where your passion lies. But is there anything you do outside of work for fun that you enjoy, that you want to share with us?
So somebody asked me maybe 10 years ago at an interview. Like, there was an interview for MD PhD program. I was interviewing somebody, and that person is probably listening to that now. She's a great person. She's at Stanford now. She said, so what is your hobby 10 years ago? And I said, I'm going to tell you very truthfully, I have one hobby, and that's raising humans. So my two children, so whatever their hobby is, that becomes my hobby. So I raise humans for hobby. So I drive them, whatever is necessary, whatever I could do outside of work. So basically, but now my humans are sort of, taking them on vacation, traveling with them, showing them the world. That was my husband's and my hobby. So we still love to travel. We're planning this summer vacation now, and we want to go together again. And we sail. We love to sail. We've sailed quite a bit around the world. We've been, in Greece and Malta and Sicily, in Mallorca and Barcelona, Cyprus, you name it, and including our Chesapeake Bay here, various locations. And we love to do that. We'd love to go as a family and sail. So I hope that sticks, and we continue doing that as our family potentially grows.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's beautiful. And I know we're almost done on time. I have one more question. I'm also curious to ask you. I love asking this question. If you had to describe yourself in one word, what would that be?
Intentional.
Oh, I like that a lot. Yes, that definitely shines through this whole
this whole hour.
The 5-year plan.
That's beautiful. The bulldozers. I won't forget that one. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. My little 3-year-old loves bulldozer. I'll tell him tonight this afternoon when I put
get in the bulldozer.
Absolutely. And we're almost at the top of the hour, like Kavita said. Maybe Kavita, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah.
The last question or anything?
Yeah, I would like Irina, you can maybe have some final words for our audience here, and then I can close out the session shortly.
Yeah. So it's an honor to be here with you and inspire the next generation of folks. Just remember that, you may not dream of a road and you'll get there somehow, from point A to point B and then C and then D. It's a windy road. You don't dream about it. So that's why I never think about past 5 years. I could see, like, maybe potentially I could see the light at the end of the tunnel and get there. But, think about things that you could achieve, but set also short-term goals that you could get there. So it's not something that you're setting yourself too far, right? And then not being happy about not getting that far. You just need to be happy about small steps.
Wonderful. No, that's absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. For all our audience, thanks for joining us. It has been an absolute honor to be here with Dr. Irina Burd and Vince, as always, my amazing co-host. I think I want to wrap up with my 3 big takeaways from your talk today, which I'm going to be reminded of very constantly. Number one, I think in a world of cars and mopeds, be a bulldozer. Like, I will never forget this. This is amazing, right? Another thing you said that really stuck with me, that there's opportunity in chaos. So when things get hard, keep pushing through. And your 5 Ps, right? Like the passion, purpose, people, progress, and profits. I hope everyone walks away from this. There's so much wisdom in this whole hour. And thank you so much for being here and for spending this hour with us and for inspiring the whole world and making this call available for people to watch for years to come. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Irina. Great. So wonderful. Have a great day.